The U.S. military footprint in Africa is known as the United States Africa Command, or AFRICOM. Now, it's been widely speculated that the U.S. plans to create more bases in Africa, but AFRICOM says it has no intention of doing so. Now, currently, it has one military base in Djibouti. Now, the U.S. appears quite keen on expanding its controversial drone program, and Niger is reportedly the first country that could get a drone base. Now, the location is very ideal, with Al-Qaeda affiliated militants in the Sahel region and ISIL-affiliated Boko Haram to the west. Now, America has nearly 2,000 troops, advisors, and other military personnel on the ground in African countries, and they're carrying out at least 78 missions in more than 20 nations. Meanwhile, Egypt is a country that gets by far the most direct military funding from the U.S. That's around $1.3 billion a year, and it has the strongest army on the continent. Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi is the first African leader Donald Trump contacted when he became the U.S. president. Now, that's an indication that Washington remains quite interested in maintaining ties with Cairo, an ally that plays a very important role in maintaining peace in the Middle East.
Mr. Trump will emphasize the war on terror tonight, and he will be able to claim the head of the #2 leader of Al-Qaeda. David Martin reports it was a CIA drone strike over the weekend.
This is the only known picture of Abu al-Khairi al-Masri, which helps explain why he survived for so long as one of Al-Qaeda's most senior leaders. But his string ran out on Sunday, when, according to U.S. officials, a CIA drone strike scored a direct hit on his car in northwestern Syria. A son-in-law of Osama bin Laden, al-Masri has been implicated in the 1998 bombings of 2 American embassies in Africa, which killed more than 200 people. Al-Masri, the name means he's from Egypt, was a longtime confidant of another Egyptian, Ayman al-Zawahiri, who became the leader of al-Qaeda after bin Laden was killed by U.S. Navy SEALs. In the years after 9/11, al-Masri fled to Iran, where he reportedly spent a decade under house arrest, but also beyond the reach of American drone strikes. After his release, he went to Syria, where al-Qaeda has been attempting to take advantage of the chaos caused by the civil war to establish a new base of operations. Al-Masri was back in business, but also back in range of drone strikes. And on Sunday, the CIA found him one last time.
ISIS is the main target, but now drones have killed about 10 senior al-Qaeda leaders in Syria in the 2.5 years since the U.S. began conducting airstrikes there.
The Iraqi army has gained more ground in its operation to release the strategic northern city of Mosul from Daesh terrorists. Military sources say the army has shut the last main exit out of western Mosul, controlling access to the city from the northwest. The road links Mosul to Tal Afar, another Daesh stronghold near the border with Syria. Iraqi forces began a new offensive to liberate western Mosul on February the 19th. The city's eastern side was liberated following 3 months of military operations in January. Reports say about 750,000 people still remain in the western part of the city. Daesh took control of Mosul in 2014.
Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan says after finishing their job in the Syrian city of Al-Bab, Ankara-backed militants will advance towards the city of Manbij in Aleppo province.
As determined as before, the next step is Manbij. Manbij belongs to Arabs. It does not belong to PYD or YPG. We relate this to our American friends. PYD and YPG must definitely move to the east of Euphrates. We told Americans the Kurdish militias must not stay there. Americans always reply they have withdrawn or they are withdrawing, but they haven't withdrawn yet.
President Erdogan also indirectly accused the U.S. of not being serious in its fight against Daesh. He noted that Turkey is ready to help the U.S.-led coalition to push Daesh out of its de facto capital, Raqqa, if Washington is willing to do so. According to Erdogan, Turkey has no plan to stay in Syria once its goals are achieved and the mission is completed. The Turkish president also categorically rejected any cooperation with the U.S.-backed Syrian Democratic Forces. The SDF includes Arab and Kurdish YPG fighters, which Ankara sees as a terrorist group. Damascus has repeatedly protested Turkey's military activities on its soil as a breach of international law.
On Tuesday, the French, the U.S., and the UK said it was time to hold Syria accountable for 3 documented cases of using chemical weapons against civilians. They wanted the Security Council to adopt a resolution that would punish Syria with new sanctions.
Will we take action on behalf of those whose lives have been destroyed by these senseless weapons?
In declining, in abdicating our responsibility, we are sending a signal of irresponsible impunity.
I shall put the draft resolution to the vote now.
But despite months of negotiations and Washington's backing, it was almost certain the motion would fail.
The draft resolution has not been adopted owing to the negative vote of a permanent member of the Council.
In fact, 2 permanent members, Russia and China, vetoed the measure, backed up by Bolivia's no vote. 3 other countries abstained. The 9 countries that voted yes blasted what they called the Security Council's moral failure to act.
Russia and China made an outrageous and indefensible choice today. They refused to hold Bashar al-Assad's regime accountable for the use of chemical weapons. They turned away from defenseless men, women, and children who died gasping for breath when Assad's forces dropped their poisonous gas.
The deputy Russian ambassador was having none of it. Vladimir Safronkov accused the West of playing politics with civilian casualties.
We have the clear impression that the co-sponsors of the document put to a vote today were using the joint investigative mechanism for just one goal, and that is to lay blame on the Assad government for the use of chemical weapons, and in so doing, create additional grounds for regime change in Damascus.
Tuesday's vote was the 7th time Russia has vetoed a measure in the Security Council that would take action against Syria. While Moscow complains that the Council is treating its ally unfairly, other members say they will do whatever they can to hold the Assad government to account, no matter how many votes it takes.
Russia says relations with the United States are at the lowest point since the Cold War. Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Sergei Ryabkov says the ties deteriorated before the Ukrainian crisis under the administration of the former U.S. President Barack Obama. Ryabkov believes that Donald Trump's presidency began amid prevailing anti-Russia sentiments, with opponents of Trump inflaming Russophobia to discredit him. The deputy added that his country would analyze signals and approaches stemming from an upcoming Trump address to Congress. He also said that Moscow has not asked Washington to lift sanctions against Russia. However, he noted that without sanctions, it would be easier to work with the U.S. on the Syrian crisis.
Now, China is upping the ante in its war of words with South Korea over the upcoming deployment to the Korean Peninsula of a very powerful piece of U.S. military hardware. Chinese state media has even suggested that Beijing should consider cutting diplomatic ties with the South Korean government to protest the move. Ji Myung-gil has more.
China is reacting with anger and boycott threats as South Korea presses on with the planned deployment of the THAAD missile defense system.
China will take measures to protect its interests and security. Any consequences entailed by THAAD will be borne by South Korea and the U.S.
The Chinese Communist Party's official People's Daily went one step further, saying Beijing should consider the possibility of severing diplomatic ties with Seoul. The newspaper also slammed the South Korean government for not taking China's opposition to THAAD seriously enough. China has been intensifying its rhetoric over the past 48 hours after the South Korean military and Lotte Group finalized a land swap deal to secure land in Seongju County that will be home to the THAAD battery.
South Korea and the U.S. have launched their annual military drills on the Korean Peninsula. The American and South Korean forces will hold 2 joint drills called Key Resolve and Full Eagle. Some 3,600 U.S. troops will take part in the first round of the exercises. The 2016 drills included strategic U.S. naval vessels and Air Force assets. Both Washington and Seoul claim that the drills are held to deter any possible use of nuclear weapons by the North. Pyongyang, however, condemns the drills as provocative. This comes as South Korean demonstrators have gathered outside the U.S. Embassy in Seoul to protest the exercises. They say the drills would push the peninsula closer to the brink of a nuclear war.
In the United States, it's hard to find a product that doesn't say Made in China. The U.S. imported more than $470 billion worth of Chinese goods and services in 2016. The label is on everything from furniture to clothing to food products. According to U.S. trade figures, the top import category is electrical machinery, followed by machinery, furniture and bedding, toys and sports equipment, and footwear. The majority of smartphones, an item that many U.S. consumers can't leave home without, are sourced in China, as are the bulk of laptops. Imports from China have enabled U.S. consumers to buy more products at lower cost. They've also helped some U.S. companies.
It's not as if Chinese corporations are necessarily ones that are benefiting all the time from production that we actually import. It happens to also be a lot of U.S. corporations.
Apple's iPhone relies on Foxconn in China to assemble its products, but its components are sourced from all around the world, and its devices are designed and sold in the United States. It's a prime example of modern global trade.
The U.S. trade deficit with China hit $347 billion last year. U.S. President Donald Trump sees an imbalance and has vowed to impose tariffs on Chinese imports. But experts warn tariffs could trigger a trade war, and that could ultimately hurt the U.S. economy.
U.S. President Donald Trump weighed in on health care, tax reform, and spending in a speech to Congress Tuesday. He speaks highly of what he has achieved so far on one of his biggest patriotic campaign promises.
Since my election, Ford, Fiat Chrysler, General Motors, Sprint, SoftBank, Lockheed, Intel, Walmart, and many others have announced that they will invest billions and billions of dollars in the United States and will create tens of thousands of new American jobs.
Trump endorsed putting tax credits in an Obamacare replacement plan, an idea opposed by many conservatives. However, tax credits are central to House Republican leadership's plan to help people afford insurance. Analysts say Trump's remarks could give that idea a crucial boost at a time when Republican division on healthcare law is growing. On tax reform, Trump promised a great tax relief for companies and the middle class, but didn't reveal his decision on the controversial trade tax proposal. The proposal is to impose a new tax on imports while exempting exports that is in line with Trump's decision to back off from NAFTA and TPP and to take on China. But a growing number of Republican senators have condemned the plan. Meanwhile, Trump also said he would push through a $1 trillion investment in infrastructure financed through both public and private capital. He's also seeking historic increase in defense spending. Overall, critics call Trump's budget plan bold and is unlikely to succeed to the extent Trump himself would like. But the speech at the Congress is a relief, according to many analysts. They say the mention of historic treaties and NATO specifically calms the U.S.'s global allies and is reassuring for those key international financial markets as well. They say the U.S. market will continue to bet their hopes on President Trump being a pro-business president, and that sentiment is likely to push U.S. stocks higher.
And let's go to neighboring South Africa now. The country's economy has been slowing, and this could affect the country's desire to host the 2022 Commonwealth Games. Durban was awarded the hosting rights in 2015 after being the only city to make a confirmed bid. But according to Sports Minister Fikile Mbalula, it may not be able to meet this commitment.
Given our economic situation, we are unable to move away from what we have agreed initially when we decided to host the Games. But nonetheless, it doesn't seem like we will find each other.
This farm in Hammersdale, KwaZulu-Natal, is where Rainbow Chicken started almost 60 years ago. Since then, the company has grown into an iconic brand and one of South Africa's largest poultry producers. But after years of fighting off an oversupply of chicken from other countries, Rainbow has been forced to put the farm up for sale.
This decision that we made, we took about a year ago, and we put a huge amount of work into reducing the size of our business. It's not something that happens overnight.
Rainbow cut its production from over 5 million birds a week to around 3.8 million. The company will now focus on producing value-added products and not frozen portions as it struggles to compete with cheaper bone-in portions from Brazil, the EU and US. The South African government has set up a task team to look into chicken imports and protectionist measures. The minister introduced a safeguard duty of 13.9%. Local producers want this to be raised to 37%. Total poultry imports into South Africa last year amounted to almost 58,000 tons. This will increase in 2017 once U.S. chicken imports are added. South Africa agreed to accept U.S. chicken portions in order to save its place under AGOA. The industry has lost almost 5,000 jobs since last year, and another 10,000 jobs are at risk.
Everybody's worried, and I am also worried about my future in the company, because at this present moment nobody knows exactly what's going to happen.
We were working hard because we want to build a career, a future with Rainbow, and now seeing people leave, you don't know what the future holds. You don't know if you're going to wake up and have a job tomorrow.
Armed violence has continued in a refugee camp in southern Lebanon. Gunmen from the Palestinian Fatah Party and Palestine's leading nationalist party and Islamist militants clashed again over several days in the Al Helway Palestinian refugee camp. The most recent violence started February 23rd. According to Reuters, one man was killed February 28th, and other reports indicate more have been wounded, including a child. Arab News reports that the young boy was wounded to the head by a gunshot and taken to a hospital. Gunmen from Fatah have regularly clashed with Islamist militants in Al Hilway, leading the United Nations Relief and Works Agency to suspend its services to the camp. According to its website, the relief agency suspended services because of its injuries to civilians, damage to UNRWA facilities, and unauthorized entries by armed actors into one agency school.
A French police sniper accidentally fired his gun during a speech given by French President François Hollande, injuring 2 people. Hollande was giving a speech dedicating a high-speed rail line in the town of Villognon. He momentarily paused after the shot, saying, quote, "I hope it's nothing serious. I don't think so," and then continued with the speech. The sniper, positioned on a nearby rooftop, was part of a security detail protecting the president. Reports say the safety was off on the officer's weapon as he changed positions, resulting in the accidental shot. The shot injured 2 people, grazing one man's leg and then lodging in the leg of another. After his speech, Hollande visited the 2 men, who were then transported to a nearby hospital. Local officials say the injuries are not serious and an official investigation into the incident is being launched.
Now, the EU Parliament has granted its president the right to cut the live broadcast of any hate speech or acts in the chamber. Any address found to break the new rules can also be retrospectively wiped from its online archive. But the move is raising concerns about censorship too. We brought it up for debate.
What they want to do is they want to stop free speech. The fact is those terrible views are already there. We need to get them into public, and we need to say to those people that you are wrong and that these things are absolutely wrong. You don't do it by stopping free speech, because once you stop one person, then you move on to the next one, then you move on to the next one, and in the end, nothing will be free.
I think that's a completely false argument. The idea that you have to give a Nazi a platform, that everybody has free speech, I think the question is there is a limitation to free speech. Holocaust denial is, in most European countries, an illegal act. What they're saying is as soon as you start putting these views out, that there's a censor of those views. And you're arguing that they should have their views extended over the airwaves and legitimised.
As you said, there are laws in place for anti-hate speech. There are laws in place. Those people can be prosecuted, and they should be. But it doesn't mean that you completely stop people's right to say anything.
What people say inside their own homes, they'll be allowed to carry on saying that. What we're saying is they will not be legitimised to millions of people to normalise their views
will not only be
and accept
not broadcast, they will be removed from the public record. You know, once you start doing that, then you have the ability to do it to anyone whose views you don't agree with.
It looks like the Batmobile, all smooth edges and sleek lines, but it won't be mechanics and design that defines the car of the future. It will be software, and that's already here. Car makers and tech giants are collaborating to connect your next car to the internet. Vehicles will be an extension of your smartphone, You'll be able to activate your apps from the dashboard, live stream your journey, switch on your lights and heating in your smart home before you've even turned into your drive. And as with the new Jaguar, even control your car with your phone or watch.
So you've got access to the vehicle information, so you can check the fuel level, so you see how much fuel you have left in the tank and how far you can drive. Or on a cold and frosty morning, you can even start your engine remotely to heat up the car. So if I select the temperature here, let's say 24 degrees, nice and warm, I can start my engine.
From 2018, all new cars in Europe will be connected with eCall, a small device that automatically contacts emergency services if your airbags are triggered. It will instantly send data with the type of vehicle, time of accident and location. It's not just high-end vehicles that will benefit from connectivity. Soon, India's 20 million tuk-tuks will all be equipped with one of these. It's a panic button, and the idea is that if you're in an accident or if you're in the back as a passenger and feeling unsafe, you can press this and the local police will immediately be alerted to where you are. But a car that is connected to the internet could also be vulnerable to hackers.
The easiest scenarios to imagine would be a hacker that would connect to your car and listen to the conversations that you're having in your car, or just access your geographical location through the car's GPS. The more hardcore scenarios would be an attacker that would manage to get to the vital functions of the car, like to influence the brakings or the airbags or the seat belts, or things that can actually influence the passengers' lives.
It seems like every time we look for something to replace BPA in our plastics, we find something else that can have adverse effects. New research suggests an alternative plastic called BHPF can leach into food and drink the same way BPA can. In the human body, BPA acts like estrogen. Some studies show it can alter reproductive development. But researchers found BHPF might end up doing the exact opposite. In testing on mice, it blocked the effects of estrogen, which led to low birth weight and sometimes failed pregnancies. An earlier substitute, called BPS, was found to cause hyperactivity in fish and heart problems in rats. For what it's worth, the National Institutes of Health says the danger BPA poses to humans isn't significant, even to pregnant women or young children. Research into its effects is still incomplete, but a recent review of the literature found current exposure levels are considered safe.